Welcome back, everybody. Stoner Jesus Show live on the video chat. We have another return guest, Chrissie Mayr. You find her, of course, on Twitter at Chrissie Mayr, ChrissieMayr.com as well, as you can see there with the power of technology. Chrissie, welcome back to the show, and thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me. Wow, this is quite the you have a scroller down below. That's good.
Yeah,
I just figured that out for myself. It's pretty exciting.
yeah. I've enjoyed everything about StreamYard so far, except that you can't play audio files, which I used to do a lot on my show. I used to play commercials and promos and skits and all that.
Yeah, it's hard to upload like a large file too. Like I wanted to play a long video and it won't let you unless it's I think a 30-second clip.
Oh wow. Yeah. All in all, thumbs up, two thumbs up, whatever.
Yeah.
I
Oh
don't.
yeah.
Good for them.
Good for them. They're taking our money.
That's right. As I mentioned, you've been on the show a couple times before. You've really kind of blown up, if I may use the term, since then. I got
Physically, yes, I am putting on weight.
obviously can't take all of the credit for the trajectory of your career, but I will try to take most of it at the very least.
Take some, absolutely. I definitely owe like a lot of my success to you for sure. Like you're probably the most high profile weed themed podcast I've ever done.
Hey, there you go. I'll
Yeah.
take that. So recently, you did your comedy album recording, which is like a big milestone in the life of a stand-up comic. How'd that go?
It is. It's a huge deal. I've been doing stand up like 10 or 11 years now, which is so crazy because I feel like I've barely been dressing myself for 10 years. So, and most comics I think in about 10 years do put out some kind of an album, and I meant to put one out 3 years ago, and then my mom died and I completely tabled the whole project. And I really wasn't thinking of it, until I mean, as people know, and as I talk about in the album, I went to the Capitol on January 6th. Like, I didn't go inside the building or anything, and I talk about like, "Oh, but it would have been great if I had because the publicity I would have been even more famous because people would have recognized me crawling up, the wall of the Capitol building."
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, I maintained a safe distance. And it's crazy to see what has happened to hundreds of people have been arrested for being both inside and outside the Capitol building. So it's like truly insane and it feels good. I feel like my album is going to be like a counterpoint to what the media has put out about January 6th. And I think it's more important to hear stories of individuals who were at the Capitol that day because there were a 1 to 2 million people there that day, but
Wow.
all you hear are accounts of the mainstream media like, "Oh, it was horrible, the deadly insurrection, so many lives were lost," and it's like it's such bullshit, and there were so many of us who were there that day who just the audacity, the hypocrisy of the mainstream media, how they covered January 6th versus how they covered the many BLM Antifa riots that occurred throughout 2020. Even 6 months prior to January 6th, there were a bunch of BLM Antifa folks who literally stormed the White House. And from what I've heard from people who were there that day, like Secret Service cops and such, like, they almost burned down the White House. Like, it was but you never hear anybody talk about it, and in fact, like, I didn't even know it was a thing until, like, I think I was interviewing Andrew Giuliani, Rudy's son, who's running for governor of New York, and I just was like, "Wow, there's just so many instances, of BLM Antifa causing so much damage and getting people killed, and the mainstream media never breathes a word of it. Yet when a couple, a million or two regular Americans, patriots, people who just don't want to see their country go down the toilet, show up in person on one day on January 6th, and it's the worst thing that's ever happened to this country. It's worse than 9/11. I mean, like we've heard
Yeah.
all the things it's been compared to, and it's such a slap in the face for not only anyone who was there that day, but just like anybody in this country, and to see what's been happening since that day, like insanity with like voter ID, the insanity at the border. I mean, of course, all the COVID stuff has been like one big scam. So it makes me feel really good to put, even if it's in the form of comedy or an album or jokes, it's like, okay, I'm putting something back into the culture that is a kind of a positive, tongue-in-cheek representation of the day. Because for so many of us, hundreds of thousands of us, we didn't see or hear about any kind of shenanigans until hours and hours later, till we were walking back to our hotels. For a lot of us, we were just standing around listening to music, holding flags. People were singing. People were like reading prayers. People, there were dogs, there were kids there, just like I remember the people selling t-shirts, like so funny. There were so many t-shirts there. I remember all the funny costumes from the day. There was a guy there with a skeleton costume and a shirt that said, "I voted for Biden 9 times." Like, you can't even make that up. Like, I can't even write that as a joke. So, and it just, there were so many people there with expressing themselves personality wise. Like, yeah, there were people there being funny, but there were also like genuine, people who had like basically left the CCP or left China, like, Chinese immigrants there with signs that saying like the CCP is evil. And we saw that on the 6th. We also saw that at the rally in December and also in November, because I had gone to cover a bunch of these rallies. It wasn't just January 6th. Like, people had been showing up to DC for a couple months already, really upset with what had gone down with the election and also just everything.
Yeah. So, are there any details yet about when and where and stuff like that? People can find the album.
It's currently
Yeah.
now being cut up into tracks. My buddy Aaron Berg is starting a new record label. I don't know if he's out about it yet, but it's going to be called Uncancelable Records, which I just love that name. It really suits him. He's a fellow comedian at Compound Media, also kind of an anti-woke comedian like myself. So he'll be producing the album. He's currently cutting it up into tracks, and he says it sounds really good, and we've been talking kind of every day. I'm hoping it'll be ready by next month so I can start to go make appearances promoting it. But I don't know. He's figuring out all the details with where it's going to stream. I also really would love to get it made up into like vinyl. I've been getting a lot of requests for that. And of course I will also have physical CDs because like I have an old car. I drive a 2010 Ford Focus, and I definitely want to be able to have a CD to put into my car. You know what I mean? I've been buying a lot of old CDs because I drive this old car around now.
Does it surprise you? And with everything else going on in the world, obviously, COVID tyranny and experimenting on kids with vaccines and inflation, and the president's got dementia and the pedophiles of the CIA and all the other shit. Does it surprise you at all that people still cling to 1/6 as some sort of catastrophic event in their life that overshadows all others?
It's crazy. It's like anybody who thinks 1/6 was a catastrophic event, like, to me, that just tells you that the person is a sheep, that they have no critical thinking skills, that they're so in a box that they don't know or haven't spoken to anybody who was there that day. They haven't tried to get firsthand accounts. Even Nick Searcy, who's an actor, who just finished shooting a movie in Montana with Gina Carano, Tyler Fisher, and a few others. That's going to be for the Daily Wire. He was at January 6th that day. He just put out a documentary about the day. And I think it's called like Capital Punishment. That came out around Thanksgiving. So it's like, if you at this point, 1 year later, still think that January 6th was the worst thing ever, it's like, well, then you're lazy or you're dumb or you're both, or you just haven't made the effort to try to learn about what really happened that day. And it's really the one thing that the left can grab onto and make a case for. And it's because the media has blown it up so much to be this huge event. And it's the one thing that they can hang on to because unfortunately, like, the left controls the mainstream media still. Like, I think non-leftists have been slowly creeping up to make a dent in that. Independent content creators, like, of course, Tim Pool, of course, Joe Rogan. Like, you can't deny the positive effect these guys have had. I mean, like, they both have more viewers than CNN, MSNBC probably put together. So I think they've made a dent, but just for so many people, the default is to turn on the TV and leave it on all day long. So there's just going to be a percentage of Americans who I feel like are going to be impossible to get through to because they just are. I don't know if it's an age thing or what, but so many people still just like tune out, listen to the news, and it gets in their head and they go, "Oh, January 6th was really horrible." And it wasn't. And I even got in trouble. I was on the Megyn Kelly podcast in July. She and I were talking about how the media exaggerated the events of the day, and I said, "Oh, like, from my perspective, it was pretty chill." Like, I meant to say, like, I didn't see anybody busting through a door. I didn't see anybody, like, getting shot with a dust cloud or anything like that. I didn't see any fist fights. Like,
Mm.
no, at no point did myself or anybody who was around me knock anything over or, like, bust through. We didn't even see any cops until we were already, like, next to the building. There was nobody stopping anybody from getting through. So there was no charging, there was no storming. We just simply walked up. So, and I talked about that with Megyn Kelly. I was like, from my perspective, it was pretty chill. But then, of course, they love to shit on Megyn Kelly, and they love to talk about January 6th. So it was like this perfect storm. It was like so many articles came out after I did her show, and of course, they love to take what I said out of context. Like, oh, comedian Chrissie Mayr said January 6th was chill. I'm like, all right, of course you're gonna say that. You know what I mean? But anybody who was there that day can kind of agree with that, unless you're like right in the front where people were kind of getting in. I think I was on the side of the building that people were not busting through, because we were all just like standing around. Like, people were climbing up some scaffolding and like dropping a flag down,
Mm.
but I didn't see anybody causing any damage. Like, I have accounts of friends who were like on the other side, and they saw, you know, it was interesting. There's this one he runs like this independent news group. I forget the name. I think it's no, I can't remember. There was a group of people, and then the one guy in the back started to try to pass up a sledgehammer to the front of this crowd, and in fact, somebody in the front, like, took it away and then, like, kinda threw it away or handed it down or got it out of harm's way. Like, there were people, actively trying to discourage, you know, destruction of property, and so many of us didn't have any kind of fights or aggressiveness or like, shenanigans, basically. But it's like all those thousands of personal accounts don't seem to matter, because the mainstream media has, like, really put their stink, and they have their narrative of how the day went down. So, it sucks, but what are you gonna do? I feel like it's a big machine, it's a big institution, and it's like turning the Titanic around or waiting for it to sink. It's just gonna take some time, and we all have to keep, fighting the fight, doing what we can.
Yeah, it seems to me like some of the few positives that have come out of this COVID ordeal. One is it seems like the acceleration of the destruction of the mainstream media's audience and the trust, whatever trust was left in them. The other, obviously, being the acceleration of as Michael Mouse would put it, paraphrasing him, the self segregation that we're involved in right now in America, with people flowing out of the Northeast and flowing out of California and moving to Texas and Florida and places like that. So it seems like there are some bright spots. Uh, do you still live in the New York area? You still in the base there?
Yes, I live in New York still. I'm in Westchester County, which is like an hour outside of the city, and I've been out here for like 5 years now. So and I had to go in, every Monday throughout the pandemic to do my radio show on Compound Media, and I was working remotely the whole time at a day job as well, and I recently, got fired from that day job because I didn't have the jab, and I was working remotely, which made absolutely no sense. I was like, "Wow, I've been able to do this job no problem remotely the last 2 years. Why all of a sudden now am I getting the boot?" And I have a feeling it had to do with, who I am as a person and getting written up in various articles. And I think it's actually a blessing because, I definitely don't want to be somebody else's like office slave forever. I don't think that's my purpose in life. And I think this was like God pushing me out of the nest, so to speak, and being like, okay, you're ready to do this like full time and stop juggling like so many other day jobs. And but it sucks, and but it's good. I feel like working a day job all these years has kept me like really grounded with kind of like the average person. A lot of comedians have rich parents, or they live for free in their parents' apartment in the city or something. So I think that's another reason why things have taken me a little bit longer, is because I've always had to work. I've always had to pay rent. So it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been like an easy or glamorous road, but again, like anybody who does comedy for longer than a few years will tell you, it's like you get bitten by the bug. It's like having AIDS You just have it now. Although I think AIDS is even pretty livable now. So it's probably worse than AIDS being
Magic
into
Johnson stayed
comedy.
for decades. He was great. I don't know.
Yeah.
If circumstances would allow, speaking of like location wise, would it be would getting out of New York be something that you would look into?
I have been like, yeah, of course, this whole time I've been thinking about it, and I'm like blessed that I'm able to, with comedy, travel to so many different parts of the country. Like, okay, I know what Appleton, Wisconsin is like. I've been to Texas like I think 3 times last year. I've been to I go to Florida like once a year anyway. Like, and my family's kind of all spread out over the country. And I just think all these road gigs have really helped me to see the country, and I'm starting to think like, "Okay, where would I wanna go?" Like, Nashville seems pretty cool, like, I know Austin is now a leftist shithole, so I would avoid Austin now. You know, you hear that Miami is gonna be the new city that, like, New York people flock to, and then Miami will now be the next kind of ruined leftist city. But yeah, and I can't move out anytime soon just because of, like, this compound media show, and also my boyfriend has a 10-year-old son, so, like,
Yeah.
we're and, a lot there's a couple of, like, elderly family members, so and I think that's the reason why at this point, if you haven't moved out of New York State, I think it's because of, like, your kids or you're taking care of, elderly family members, or it's like a work thing too, which kind of sucks because I feel like there's New York City it has this feeling like the government sort of just has it by the balls, and they're just trying to see how much they can get away with because the people who are left are now kind of truly desperate, or they just make so much money that kind of nothing, the rules don't really apply to them.
Yeah. Obviously, on your show, you've had a lot of political types, stuff like that, and I'm sure you've talked a lot about kind of where we're headed as a people, as a country, as a society, however you want to put it. Where do you think we go from here, as far as the United States? Are we looking at just destruction, secession, break up different parts of different countries within the United States? What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, I don't feel like, I mean, I wanna be an optimist. I think that's the best way to live your life is I know people, you probably talk to many people who are like, "Oh, I'm black pilled because of X, Y, and Z." Like, the more libertarians I feel like I talk to, which I guess I do identify as a libertarian, uh, maybe on some issues more of a classical liberal, but you do have to just make sure that what you're taking in, like, the information you're taking in and the thoughts you're taking in and even just what you're telling yourself is not gonna keep you depressed and make you feel, like, hopeless. It's so important to have hope, and it's like, I'm not a political science major, like, expert. I don't know a lot about, like, the economy and the Fed, and, like, there's people you could have on who could talk for days on those subjects, and I feel like when I do talk to people who are experts in those subjects, I do start to feeling like, "Oh, man, what's happening to our money? I don't even know." Like, I'm intimidated by crypto. Like, I have some. I don't know what's going on, but it's like, I know that I have to buy. It's like, "Oh, I guess I feel like I have to buy a bucket of dehydrated food. I guess, like, I feel like I have to do that." Like, am I maybe, whatever makes you comfortable to be a little bit of a prepper, to be a little bit of like, okay, storing up weapons and ammo, be a little bit more looking into crypto. Like, I think do and read as much as you can, to just be like, all right, because at the end of the day, we only can do what's in our control, which is not that much. What do you have control over? Your attitude, how you treat people, what you tell yourself, how healthy you keep your body. That's another big like goal of this year is like just yeah, like now that I don't have this like pesky day job, it's okay. Like it's not selfish to like go to the gym. It's not selfish to go like try to work out or like make sure you're spending money on like some vegetables and like get your supplements down. Like really spend some time, like make sure you're getting a magnesium supplement. Like I really like this one. It's called Natural Calm. It comes in like a dust. You just do like a spoon or two in your water. And 80% of people are magnesium deficient. And once you start getting and supplements, the most people, it's like you take them, you forget to take them, and then you're back. So it's like if you can be generally taking them most of the time, I think you're solid. And like something like magnesium helps with mood. It helps with going to the bathroom. Make sure you're getting vitamin D. That helps with mood. And it's something if you just like forget about your supplements and a couple weeks later you'll be like, "Oh, why do I just feel blah?" It's like those are little things that help so much to your well-being, like getting fresh air, just like little, even like, oh, like I buy a lot of candles that are on sale, and like that helps my sanity, like figuring out what you need to do to recenter yourself, whether it's like, and these are all chick things, obviously, right? But it's like taking a hot bath. Like, okay, those little things matter. Making sure your space is like tidy. Don't let like papers like build up everywhere. But I think the supplement thing is really important. Obviously, like all the supplements we've been hearing this whole time that are good against the current coof, right? The vitamin D, the vitamin C, zinc, quercetin, echinacea, any of those like immunity building supplements are always good to be good, but like definitely in the winter it is giving me hope to see that the coof has mutated down to such a weak version.
Yeah.
Omicron to me is it's essentially a cold, and I've never been a mask person. Like I'm so like grateful that everybody I live with in my house, like my boyfriend, his parents, his brother, his girlfriend, like we're all on the same page. Thank God, because I know that that's another stress too. If you have people in the house who are different, who feel differently, like on masks or vaccine, like, this particular vaccine or gene therapy, whatever you want to call it. And it's been crazy. And I think the powers that be want it this way. They want people fighting. They want families fighting and breaking up, because the more you lose your foundation, the more you're going to look to the government to be your new daddy. So whether it's like, I think the lockdowns have made a lot of people kind of wake up and see what's really important to them. Like, I think if you were kind of fucking around and like dating whoever, I think it's made you be like, oh, I need to find a ride or die, or if
Mm.
you were with somebody and a partner and all this time in the house with them has shown you like, oh, wow, we really aren't on the same page. Well, then it's brought that to light. And I'm all about like embrace change, let the stuff that's not working for you fall away, and just try to be in touch with your like emotional state, not in a gay way, but you know what I mean, like just try to like take care of yourself on all fronts. And it's so easy for us, like think of the different levels. There's like a health level, there's work, there's like love, affection, like there's creative, and like just try to make sure all your levels are good, because most of the time like, oh, we'll work a lot and it's like, oh man, like I need sleep, I need sex, I need hugs, I need creative expression. And then I think as good of a job as you can do as like checking up on your levels, that will keep you from like, snapping at somebody in a nail salon, which somebody did to me on Christmas Eve. I got reamed out for not wearing a mask. And then this fucking bitch, this Karen, brought her huge hulking husband in wearing a mask to also yell at me. So it's like people are insane. People have snapped during the last 2 years. They have lost their minds because they have bought into something that is not giving them any kind of returns. I think, the people that have bought in on the multiple jabs and the booster and the masks, it's like, well, they were told things would be back to normal by now, and they're not. So
Mhm.
they're like, oh man, especially if they still ended up getting the coof, which most people have gotten some version of it by now. I think maybe I got the Delta or whatever. I had the regular coof in September. And I remember when I got it, I have hair in my mouth. When I got it, I got such a mild case, thank God, but I was like, "They shut the economy down for this? For this shit?" Like, I confused it for PMS at first. I had cramps, I had, like, body aches, and I just thought that those were cramps. I thought, "Oh, I hadn't worked out." I worked out for the first time in a while. I guess I'm just sore, and then, I had a cough, and I was like, "Oh, I don't want people to think I have COVID. I better just take a lot of cough drops and honey and tea," and I basically, like, healed myself on like a buttload of honey and tea and cough drops. And then it wasn't until I had a headache for 3 days straight that I was like, okay, I'm not like a headache person. So that's weird. And then my boyfriend had it too. He had it much worse. Then he got the test. And I was like, what? I'll get tested too. And I was like, oh shit, I'm positive. Look at that.
Mm.
So it was like kind of nice to get it, because I was like, okay, now I'm not feeling left out. And then I think a bunch of us all had the Omicron too, which is basically like, why does every illness and sickness and virus need its own name now? It's like, well, we know why. It's so
Yeah.
who can make big bucks off of new pills and new cures for something, because we're not going to acknowledge the cures and the pills that have been around for decades that have been crushing it and curing people of all sorts of stuff. No, we want to stay away from the generics, the stuff that's basically free to people. Like these people are criminals. It's so disgusting. And it's just good to have that knowledge, but not let it like take your joy and rob you of like your spirit and your kind of purpose in life. um just think about like, all right, what can I do today to feel good and work towards my goals and take care of my people, and that's all you can really do. And I think if you find yourself getting like really worried or doom and gloom about the future, like just try to like come back to the present moment, because like people have lived through harder times than this. you know um there's people like currently probably getting bombs dropped on them that we don't hear about. So yeah, I think just trying to, like, take care of yourself and be good to your people and, like, talk, you know? Don't forget to, like, call people up and, like, sometimes talk for an hour, you know? 'Cause I
Yeah.
think we get so in our phones and, like, texty and messaging, you're like, "Oh, I don't," you have that sort of empty needing of people feeling.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, like, especially nowadays with social media and stuff, it can be really toxic if you start scrolling through Twitter or whatever.
And it's
Something
addictive because then you get in a loop and you're like, "I gotta find something," and you're like, "Wait, an hour has gone by." Like, I could have been reading. I could have been, like, taking time for myself or, building something.
Yeah, I have a obviously because I follow a lot of cannabis people on Twitter. I have a lot of left leaning people that I follow, so it's a lot of you don't get the vaccine, you're killing grandma, and so on and so forth. Sometimes I just got to get away from
Wow.
it. It's
Isn't that funny? And you would think people that are into marijuana and, like, possibly, alternative cures and herbs and, like, medical freedom and stuff, like, you think that those would be overlapping groups, but it's surprising to see
yeah, there's so
that it's
many of them
not.
that have seen the persecution of the government firsthand for over 80 years. To this day, the federal government won't admit that marijuana can be used as medicine. And it's those same people that are so gun ho in that area. In every other aspect of their life, they're ready for the government to just come in and take over and tell me what to do and where to go and what should
Right,
faith.
because it's
But
like you wanna kick your feet up because life is hard. Life has always been hard. It's just that we didn't hear about it so much because we didn't have social media until, like, pretty recently. Like, you wanna hear about hard? Like, ask your dead grandparents. I mean, they're dead, so you can't, but, like, there have been, I would say probably, like, my grandmother's generation, like, they had it harder in some ways, but then easier in others. I think we have the advantage, like technology has made so many aspects of our lives so much easier. It's like, oh, you could get a toilet seat delivered in a day over Amazon, but we have different problems that our grandparents didn't even have to think of because like my grandma got married with a high school education. What the fuck? You know what I mean? She didn't have to like sweat it out commuting to the city for 10 years, like getting jerked off on a subway. She didn't have to deal with that. Like her life was kind of easy in that way. But maybe, she couldn't look up a recipe of, like, how to make her coleslaw more exciting. So
yeah, it's things are. I think mentally we are in a lot of ways worse off than people back then because we've a lot of us have you just we manufacture so much to worry about because like the basics are like back in the depression you worried about if you're going to die tomorrow from starvation. But a lot of people don't have to worry about that anymore, so now they're worried about, their pronouns and their bio and stupid
oh,
shit like.
yeah, those people, like, they either have no real problem, so they're trying to front like they do to get attention and validation. Like, all people need those things, but I think there's a particular need with folks in their 20s, like, they're really still figuring out who they are as people and finding themselves, and they're also, I think, dealing with, like, a lack of love because society has told them, like, "Fuck women, they're all terrible. Fuck men, they're all terrible." And, like, we've been conditioned to kinda, like, hate each other and not work together, and I know because I fell for that same trick in college. Like, I graduated being like, "Oh, I don't need a man." Like, I definitely don't wanna be a mom. That's considered settling and,
Mm,
like, being a loser. Like, "Oh, really? The best I can do is just reproduce?" But I look under that, and it's like, I didn't have a boyfriend out of college. Like, I didn't graduate. So many girls I would, like, watch them have kids in their 20s, and it's like, "Oh, wow." Like, I didn't have any of that, so I understand why the lack of that is what makes a lot of these women in particular, like, very angry because they don't wanna acknowledge that they're missing something, like, pretty basic and primal, so they fucking just put all their energy like, it comes out kind of negatively and toxic in the form of, like, what we see all these TikTokers do and, like,
Mhm.
cutting their hair and dyeing it a horrible color, and it's just like, okay, it's like just cries for help have been totally embraced. What would normally be like, "Oh, wow, this is a cry for help. Let's get her in somewhere. Let's get her talking to somebody." Like, "Oh, like, share, share, share. She's trending. Good for you."
Yeah, I think people who look for problems, I think it definitely does something to your psyche and to your mental processes when you're just geared towards what can I be outraged about? What can I be pissed off about? Why is this person not as good as me? What are they doing wrong? I think it's fucking with a lot of young people, especially, and we're going to see it more and more as time goes on.
It's robbing them of their potential, and it's like, I think once you have your love down and validation, you're feeling good about yourself, or maybe a partner, then you can work on, "What am I building in this world? What business am I gonna create? What family am I gonna create? What community am I gonna help build?" But if you don't have that foundation solid, you can never move on to the second level, which is why we see so many young people kind of floundering at that base level because they have no foundation, and it's kind of robbing them of their future. And I think the government is encouraging this to set up like a generation of people. Like, I think we see, I don't know if it's China or Japan, there's like basically a generation of like men that don't get married that are like just, you know, and probably women too, but like these sad like men that are like just never get married, and they end up being like very dependent on the government, and they live in like a single kind of like small room pod type situation. I wish I had the details for this, but like maybe somebody listening knows what I'm talking about. But I think that this is all being encouraged to create a generation of people who are dependent on the government. Because if you hate your family because they have different political beliefs, or you've turned your back on your friends because they voted for Trump, or if you've broken up with your boyfriend or a fiance because they wouldn't get the vaccine, like, what does that all mean? Like, now you're kind of by yourself,
Absolutely.
which is right where they want you.
I agree 100%. One more thing on the COVID thing. I remember when you tweeted out, it was like late September or so that you had COVID. I had it at the same time, late September, early October. And I definitely think that was the Delta variant. These
Mm,
kids today, these people today, these pussies, they have the Omicron. They don't know
yes.
what it's like
They
back
don't
when
know what it's like.
I had like a sore throat for like 3 days. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
My boyfriend had a cough for about a month. Like, he had it really bad. He had a really annoying cough. He had to get, like, an inhaler. He had to get, like, a bunch of stuff. So it took him a little bit longer. I wonder if it affects, like, men a little bit worse. That's what I keep hearing, but
I hope not.
I think I just got lucky. So
Nowadays, you take some Nyquil or whatever. Just take some Nyquil and just
yeah,
wipe.
just throw back some NyQuil, have some honey. Like, honey is so good for coughs. Chamomile tea is, like, antibacterial or something. It's like I don't know. Read a bag of tea, it'll tell you. I just think that, like, these normal everyday things that have been working fine for decades, and now you have to panic and, like, call up big pharma and ask them to heal you, and they want us, like, getting away from nature, from herbs, from the stuff that's cheaper, right? That maybe we could grow ourselves or make ourselves. So,
Yeah. There was a study the other day talking about how cannabis blocks the receptors that bring COVID into your body and helps you keep from getting COVID. So,
damn, I had an edible the other day, and like, I hadn't had anything, like, in the weed world for, like, a while, and, like, I don't know if this means I had too much, but, like, I just got really vulnerable and really needy, and, like, I just felt out of it. I felt, like, emotionally unstable, and I was like, "Is that a purging?" And I was like, "Okay, is what's happened?" And then I felt a little weird, like, the next day too. So I think I was, like, a little bit weird for, like, 2 days, and I was like, "I wonder if this is, like, purging anxiety that I have, or does it just make me more emotional?" I couldn't figure that out.
yeah, you gotta be careful with edibles. Anybody out there watching and listening, be very careful. They can fuck you up. If you're like you smoke 12 blunts or whatever, it's not the same. It's just not.
No, it's not. This was, like, and I should know this, like, taking edibles. She was a guest on my show. She's like an OnlyFans girls who had just come from, like, a shoot where she was getting fisted. And I was like, "This is the person I'm taking edibles from. Don't worry." She washed her hands, I think. And it was cute because I like gummies, and it was in, like, a little Sour Patch gummy package. And I was like, "It's just one." It was, like, so small, and I just don't like feeling, like, emotionally out of control,
Yeah,
and that's what I was going through.
Yeah, they can definitely pack a lot in to a tiny edible. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Chrissy, before I let you go, what kind of dates do you got coming up? What kind of projects? Anything that people can see in the next few months?
Yes, I am gonna be back in Long Island, performing with comedians at the Compound on February 26th. You can get tickets for that on my website or go to compoundcomedy.com. I will be in Savannah, Georgia at the Wormhole Comedy Club March 19th, and then I'll be back in Florida to do Side Splitters in Tampa March 20th. And then again, like as soon as I have details about this album, I will be posting it like crazy. So hopefully I can get a lot of pre-sales going, because that's like what I think is really gonna piss off a lot of these leftist comics. Like if my album like reaches number one on iTunes, like even for a day, even for like half a day, I get to be like, you know what, Chrissy, you did something. You made some you made some bitches cry. No. Because there's so many people that wanted to like completely unperson me after the 6th. They're like,
Yeah,
oh, she should be exiled from comedy. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, I don't know. People are weird. But yeah,
yeah,
got some shows coming up. Listen to my podcast, the Chrissie Mayr podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud. I got new episodes of that coming out 4 times a week. And I also do a show called The Wet Spot on Compound Media Mondays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and that's the show where I have like comedians and porn stars come on. And we just got a motor bunny and we christened it literally on Monday. We had a couple girls sit on it. It's like it's like a vibrating sort of, you sit on it and there's a dial and then maybe you come or maybe you don't. But
isn't that life in general?
that is life in general. It really is.
Maybe you come, maybe you don't. This is,
Yeah. It's about the journey, man.
that's right. Chrissy, thank you for being on the show. And as always, got more stuff to talk about or whatever, please come back in the future.
Oh, I definitely will.
Awesome. Thank you, Chrissy. Have a good
Thanks,
day.
Stoner Jesus.